Here are the top stories for today, May 12, 2022. President Rodrigo Duterte insisted the persistent eradication of illegal drugs even until the next administration. Presumptive Vice President Sara Duterte Carpio vowed to advocate peace and discipline once she assumes her post as Education Secretary. The Philippine economy has accelerated in the first quarter of 2022. And U.S. President Joe Biden congratulated presumptive President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. as he leads the polls by a landslide win. Good day, I am William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. President Rodrigo Duterte insisted the persistent eradication of illegal drugs must be pursued even until the next administration. In the talk to the people, Duterte said he is hoping that the incoming leadership would execute heavier pressure on the campaign to spare the youth and the nation. He added that the illegal drug operations seem to be unending, citing involvement of those in law enforcement. The chief executive then appealed to human rights advocates to carefully consider the widespread operation of illegal drugs. Duterte meanwhile noted he will take part in the drug war even as a civilian once he steps down.
Di rin ako papayag, baski na civilian ako. Kung mayroon diyang magsumbong ako doon sa pulis o sa PDEA, do something about it kasi mayroong problema. But I would insist on a continuance of the drug war.
President Rodrigo Duterte urged parents to be on guard for their children against schemes of terrorist fronts. This as he vows to pursue catching up with terrorists to maintain law and order in the country. Duterte also underscored the implementation of anti-terrorism law, which has passed the scrutiny of the Supreme Court. Besides parents, the president called out to spiritual leaders and human rights advocates to encourage terrorists to drop their guns.
Sabihin mo nyo sa mga anak ninyo, kung hindi na nag-aaral yan at nawawala na, kung alam ninyo alam mo man kung ang bata, if you are the parents, alam mo kung ano ang asta ng bata, alam mo na that there's something wrong. Maging bukal yan, the discontent that they try to.
Presumptive Vice President Sara Duterte Carpio vowed to advocate peace and discipline once she assumes her post as Education Secretary. Duterte Carpio said it is an agreed decision with presumptive President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. She said they aim to produce skilled learners with full potential and patriotism. Earlier, Education Secretary Leonor Briones expressed support and willingness for a smooth transition of the sector's premium plan's long-term agenda. Marcos Jr. has disclosed one of the reasons he appointed Duterte is because of her role as a mother who wants to make sure her children are well-trained and well-educated.
Our incoming Vice President has agreed to take the brief of Department of Education. So si Inday Sara, sabi niya kaya niya, tinanong ko sa kanya kung kaya niya yung trabaho dahil mahirap ang trabaho ng Secretary of Education. Pero nag-agree naman siya at palagay ko kasama na diyan dahil she is a mother and she wants to make sure that her children are well trained and well educated, and that's the best motivation that we can hope for.
U.S. President Joe Biden has personally called presumptive President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. as he leads the polls by a landslide win. Likewise, the Chinese government extends greetings for the smooth conduct of elections in the country. The details from Stephanie Sevillano.
The United States government says it is willing to work with the country's new leader. This morning, the White House confirmed that U.S. President Joe Biden congratulated presumptive President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr., as he looks forward to working with a new leader to strengthen the alliance between the two nations. Meanwhile, the Chinese government congratulated the leading candidates in the recently held May 9 polls. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Liyan said he is hoping that the next administration will be able to continue the flourishing relationship between Beijing and Manila as established by President Xi Jinping and President Rodrigo Duterte. He also said that China will continue to work together with the Philippines to stay committed to good friendship, focus on post-COVID growth, expand win-win cooperation, and bring more tangible benefits to both people. The partial and unofficial tally in the presidential race consistently points to an overwhelming win for Ferdinand Marcos Jr. with more than 31 million votes, more than double the lead against Vice President Leni Robredo with more than 14 million votes. For the PNA Newsroom, I am Stephanie Sevillano.
Following the easing of restrictions, the Philippine economy has accelerated by 8.3% in the first quarter of 2022, according to the Philippine Statistics Authority. Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Carl Kendrick Chua attributed the growth to the country's full reopening. The gross domestic product drew a remarkable increase from the previous 7.8% during the fourth quarter of 2021. It is also significantly higher than the negative 3.8% recorded in the same period last year. The PSA indicated manufacturing as one of the prime contributors, growing by more than 10%. This also includes the growth in wholesale and retail trade of motorcycles, transportation, and storage. Still ahead, President Duterte thanks the Filipino people and all sectors for making this year's elections peaceful. The PNP says it has succeeded in curbing election-related violence in Mindanao. We'll be back after a quick break. Keep it here on the PNA Newsroom.
Hi everyone, James Deacon here. The COVID-19 vaccines are finally here, and the government wants to make sure the vaccines reach us. So let's do our part by making sure that we get registered to be included in the vaccination list of our LGU. You can register right in the comfort and safety of your own homes through your LGU's online registration platform. And you can also register on-site in the vaccination venues or through your barangay. Remember, getting vaccinated is the first step towards ending this pandemic. So let's do our part as disciplined citizens. Bida ang may disiplina. Magpakarehistro at magpabakuna para sa ligtas na pamilya, ligtas na bayan.
President Rodrigo Duterte has expressed hope his successor would serve the Filipino people with all his heart. Duterte made the statement as he acknowledged there are already clear winners in this year's elections. He also enjoined his fellow Filipinos to accept the leading candidates.
Sana yung manalo, i-advance whoever would come out. You have my congratulations well in advance. I am hopeful that you will serve the Filipino people with all your heart and ability and prioritize the welfare of the general public above everything. I thank and congratulate the Filipino people. You made the election successful because you have made your will known by performing your sacred right and duty to vote. Welcome the President, kung sino man yan, di doon sa Malacanang.
Duterte also lauded the Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, for the swift transmission of the election results, as well as the poll workers and volunteers for ensuring the orderly conduct of the elections.
It was a peaceful, generally peaceful. I thank and congratulate the COMELEC, our teachers, the military, the police, and the civil society sector, and of course the thousands of volunteers for all the work and handling participation in the conduct of this year's election.
The Office of the Presidential Advisor on Peace, Reconciliation and Unity, or OPAPRU, described the May 9 elections as generally peaceful, orderly, and organized. OPAPRU Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. said the democracy was at its finest despite some reported isolated incidents of violence and grueling hours of queuing. Galvez congratulated all people who patiently lined up at polling precincts to cast their votes and urged them to tear down the walls of divisiveness, bitterness, and animosity of partisan politics. Galvez earlier said he hopes the next administration will sustain the gains of the peace process under the Duterte government. Interior Secretary Eduardo Año reports that the recently held national and local elections is generally peaceful and orderly. Based on the comparative chart he presented this morning during the Talk to the People, there are only 16 validated election-related incidents from January 9 until the election day on May 9. There are 27 incidents recorded during the election day, of which only 6 were suspected election-related. A total of 245 vote-buying incidents were also recorded from January 1 to May 9. Año said 2022 polls have less incidents compared to the 2016 and 2010 elections. Candidates are urged to submit their Statement of Election Contribution and Expenditures, or SOSE, to avoid facing charges. Abra Provincial Election Officer Ricardo Lampak said candidates have already been reminded of the laws requiring the submission of the document. Lampak said that whether a candidate has lost or won, the submission of a SOSE is still required. The deadline for the submission is on June 8th. Submission of the SOSE is a requirement prescribed by the Omnibus Election Code of the Philippines to determine compliance with the expenditure limit of a candidate. The Philippine National Police acknowledged its preparations and actions to prevent the spread of violence during the elections in Mindanao this year. Chris Mundo has the story.
The Philippine National Police has successfully contained the usual outbreak of violence in Mindanao during the May 9 elections. PNP Directorate for Operations Major General Valeriano de Leon attributed this to early preparations and real-time adjustments on the ground. He said the Commission on Elections should also be credited since the poll body facilitated the movement of police to areas with serious security concerns. The PNP has recorded 52 incidents on Election Day, 21 of which were classified as serious and almost all happened in Mindanao. The 6 fatalities recorded on Election Day were all in Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, particularly in Lanao del Sur and Maguindanao, through shooting incidents and explosions. In Abra, the generally peaceful elections last May 9 was proof that election-related violence is now a thing of the past in the whole province. Congressman and La Paz Municipality Mayor-elect Joseph Santo Niño J.B. Bernos insisted that elections in his province were 100% peaceful, even as he lamented how their neighboring provinces seemed unable to rid themselves of violence. Bernos made the pronouncement despite a shootout between the police and the personnel of Vice Mayor Josephine Somera Disono in Pilar in March. There were also reports of intimidation and harassment that circulated on social media. Meanwhile, a police official attributed the success of the 2022 national and local elections in Bulacan to the prompt and appropriate security preparations by the police and concerned agencies. Acting Bulacan Police Provincial Office Director, Colonel Charlie Cabradilla cited the efforts to ensure the integrity of the polls, successfully preventing any potential interference and preserving peace and order. He said over 1,400 police officers, together with personnel from the Armed Forces of the Philippines, performed election duties at voting sites and checkpoints across the province. Cabradilla said the BPPO registered 0 election-related atrocities before, during, or after the election. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Chris Mundo.
The Philippines is leading the development and commercialization of golden rice, one of the last legacies of the Duterte administration. Agriculture Secretary William Dar noted the positive development as the agency is eyeing its commercialization following its kickoff in Nueva Ecija. Likewise, DA spokesperson Assistant Secretary Noel Reyes added some countries have expressed interest to follow the Philippines' move. The DA works closely with the Philippine Rice Research Institute and the Central Luzon State University to ensure they will be able to materialize its production. The production and commercialization of golden rice intend to address vitamin A deficiency. More stories from the newsroom. The Presidential Task Force on Media Safety thanks the PNP for protecting journalists throughout the elections. Malacanang hails Pencak Silat athlete Francine Padios for winning the country's first Hanoi Sea Games gold medal. Details ahead, stay with the PNA Newsroom. The Presidential Task Force on Media Security thanked the Philippine National Police for its invaluable contribution to the peaceful elections and for ensuring the safety of journalists. PT-FOM's Executive Director Joel C. Egco announced that no journalist or broadcaster was harmed during the elections. Egco pointed out that elections in the country are becoming more peaceful, all thanks to President Rodrigo Duterte prioritizing peace and order. Egco called on all journalists to be the instrument of peace and unity by urging all Filipinos to respect the will of the majority. Police Brigadier General Roderick Agustus Alba, chief of the PNP Public Information Office, said the PNP is playing an ever-increasing role in protecting journalists under the guidance of the Office of the President. Fitch Solutions Country Risk and Industry Research sees a smooth transition to the next administration that will likely continue focusing on the current government's policies. The research firm expects the Marcos administration to continue the government's Build infrastructure program, as well as maintain a delicate balancing act between the U.S. and China in terms of foreign policy. Fitch said Marcos has had little indication regarding his government's policy nor the details of his prospective cabinet. It cited Marcos's bid to put up an oil price stabilization fund to address the oil price upticks instead of removing the excise tax on fuel products. With regards to the United States, it cited Marcos's statement last March 16 of keeping the special relationship with the world's largest economy. In sports, Malacanang congratulated Pencak Silat athlete Francine Padios for delivering the Philippines' first gold medal in the ongoing 31st Southeast Asian Games in Hanoi, Vietnam. Acting Presidential Spokesperson and Communications Secretary Martin Andanar made the statement Espadios ruled the artistic tunggal single final after edging Indonesia's Puspa Arumsari. The Philippines' Courage team also delivered 1 silver from Helen Aklopen and 2 bronze medals from Charlie Quelino and George Baclagan. The Philippine kickboxing team also secured 8 medals, with Renalyn Daquel assuring herself of at least a silver medal. The Philippines is eyeing to defend its overall title after ruling the 2019 edition with 149 gold, 117 silver, and 121 bronze medals. With the elections drawing to a close, a group of students in Ilocos Norte decided to deal with the posters and tarpaulins expected to make up the bulk of the garbage. The student volunteers of Luzon National High School in Pagudpud took the time to remove posters of the candidates on Wednesday. The collected plastics will be shredded and converted into eco bricks, while the tarpaulin posters will be recycled into eco bags. The Pagudpud School is among the green advocacy schools in the province that supports the government's implementation of solid waste management program. 1 eco-tile brick is produced for every 50 to 100 pieces of plastic, which is about 5 to 6 times stronger than a regular brick made of sand and cement. These eco-tile bricks are sold at 80 to 100 pesos a piece to gardeners and resort owners in Pagudpud town to beautify their landscape. Let's take another look at today's biggest stories. President Rodrigo Duterte insisted the persistent eradication of illegal drugs even until the next administration. Presumptive Vice President Sara Duterte Carpio vowed to advocate peace and discipline once she assumes her post as Education Secretary. The Philippine economy has accelerated in the first quarter of 2022. And U.S. President Joe Biden congratulated presumptive President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. as he leads the polls by a landslide win. As Filipinos, we all have a vital role to play in preventing the spread of COVID-19.
So remember, wear your face masks and face shields, wash your hands often, practice safe physical distancing, go out only for essential reasons, and get vaccinated as soon as possible to protect ourselves, our families, and the community. Together, we can beat COVID-19.
Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. For more news content, check our webpage or log on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day.